The sun had barely risen over the endless plains, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. But the small town of Red Rock was already stirring. In the quietest corner of this town lived a man who had become more shadow than human, a lone cowboy named Jake Callahan. He was a man whose past had been carved by loss and solitude, whose eyes carried the weight of years spent walking a life no one truly understood. The townsfolk whispered about him, some with pity, some with fear, for Jake's presence alone seemed to command both respect and distance. He didn't seek friends, didn't need companions, and had long abandoned the notion of love, believing that the world had nothing left for him but dust, whiskey, and the haunting echoes of old memories. Each morning he saddled his horse, rode out into the vast openness of the prairie, and returned only when the horizon swallowed the last light of day, leaving him in the dim glow of his small cabin with nothing but silence and the scent of smoke curling from his fireplace. Jake's life had been a routine of emptiness, a rhythm he had perfected over years of isolation. He remembered love once, long ago, in fleeting moments that had been stolen from him too soon. That memory had left a hollow space in his heart, a void that no amount of work, whiskey, or wandering could fill. Townsfolk often wondered why he remained, why he didn't leave like so many others who sought fortune and freedom elsewhere. But Jake didn't leave because he was waiting for something, even if he didn't know what. Something deep inside him, buried beneath the weight of his solitude, still held a fragile spark, a faint whisper that life could offer more than the pain he had endured. It was a hot afternoon when everything changed. Jake had just returned from a long ride through the canyon trails, his horse trotting wearily under the burden of the blazing sun. He swung open the door of the only inn in Red Rock, hoping for a brief respite and perhaps a quiet meal, when the creak of a distant carriage wheel and the frantic clatter of hooves caught his attention. He turned, and for the first time in years, his heart skipped a beat, not with anticipation, but with confusion. There, at the edge of the dusty main street, a young woman was being shoved from a carriage. Her dress was white, flowing and torn in places, and a veil barely held onto her disheveled hair. Her eyes were wide with fear, her lips trembling as she called out for help. And in that instant, Jake felt something stir inside him, something he thought had long died. The town froze as the scene unfolded. The bride, clearly abandoned and terrified, struggled to stand, her hands clutching the fabric of her gown. Jake didn't hesitate. He pushed past the curious onlookers and approached her, his voice low and steady, carrying authority that silenced the murmurs around them. "You're safe now," he said, offering his hand. For a moment the bride looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and relief, as if the mere fact that someone cared enough to help was impossible to believe. Jake lifted her gently, leading her to his horse, and without asking, she climbed onto the saddle behind him, her arms instinctively wrapping around his waist. The world seemed to fade into the dusty wind as they rode away from the chaos, leaving Red Rock and its whispers behind. As they traveled, the woman introduced herself as Emily. She spoke with a voice that trembled, telling him of her betrayal. A groom who had promised forever only to abandon her at the altar, leaving her stranded in a town that barely tolerated strangers. Her story poured out like a river, a torrent of fear, heartbreak, and disbelief. And with each word, Jake felt his hardened heart begin to crack. He had never allowed anyone close enough to speak to the emptiness inside him. And yet, as Emily clung to him, sharing her pain with raw honesty, he realized that her presence was filling the hollow spaces he had so carefully shielded. The ride continued through canyons and valleys, the silence between them punctuated only by the distant cries of birds and the occasional gust of wind. Jake found himself talking, a rare thing, telling Emily fragments of his own life, his losses, his regrets, and the emptiness that had defined his existence. She listened without judgment, her eyes reflecting empathy and understanding, and in that quiet companionship, an unspoken connection formed. For the first time in years, Jake felt his heart respond not with pain, but with a cautious hope, a spark that perhaps, just perhaps, life had something unexpected in store. By nightfall, they reached a secluded part of the prairie where the sky stretched endlessly. Stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds. Jake set up a small campfire, and Emily, exhausted yet unwilling to let her guard down completely, sat silently beside him. They shared a simple meal, the warmth of the fire casting flickering shadows across their faces. And in that moment, the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them. Jake found himself stealing glances at her, noticing the subtle quiver of her lips, the way her hair caught the firelight. And something deep inside him stirred, a yearning he hadn't felt in years, a need to protect, to care, to love. As the night deepened, Emily finally let her head rest on his shoulder. Jake felt her breath slow, the tension leaving her body, and he realized that for the first time in his lonely life, he was not alone. His heart, once an empty canyon echoing with the ghosts of the past, began to feel alive again. But beneath this newfound warmth, a storm of uncertainty loomed. Jake knew that life had a way of testing the fragile threads of hope, and he sensed that Emily's arrival was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about love, trust, and himself. The fire crackled. The night air whispered through the prairie, and Jake understood something profound. The arrival of this abandoned bride had shattered the walls he had built around his heart. He didn't yet know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt something he thought impossible. He felt alive. And as Emily drifted into a tentative sleep beside him, Jake whispered to the stars above, vowing silently that he would protect this fragile hope, no matter the cost. Red Rock would never be the same, and neither would he. Something extraordinary had entered his life, and Jake Callahan, the lone cowboy whose heart had been empty for so long, now faced a truth he could not ignore. Love had arrived unexpectedly, and it demanded courage, sacrifice, and a willingness to risk everything he had ever known. And for those watching this story unfold, there's something to remember. Sometimes life brings us the most unexpected people at the exact moment we've given up hope. Don't miss the next chapter of this tale, and make sure to subscribe, so you never miss a story that could change the way you see love, courage, and destiny. The morning sun spilled golden light across the prairie, and Jake awoke to find Emily already stirring by the campfire. Her eyes, though weary from the night's ordeal, held a quiet determination. She looked at him, and in that glance, Jake saw not just fear or loss, but strength, a courage that had carried her even when the world abandoned her. For a moment, silence stretched between them, unspoken words heavy in the air, until Emily finally spoke. "I don't know why I trust you, but I do, more than anyone in a long time." Jake nodded, feeling the warmth in his chest swell. It was a feeling he hadn't dared imagine. Trust, hope, and the first stirrings of love. They rode back toward Red Rock together. But the town was not ready to embrace Emily so easily. Gossip ran like wildfire, and whispers of scandal and betrayal followed her wherever she went. Yet Jake, protective and resolute, refused to let fear dictate their path. He faced those who dared question her honor, his presence alone enough to silence them. Emily, inspired by his courage, began to smile again, small but genuine, each smile chipping away at the walls around Jake's heart. In her laughter, he felt a life he had thought forever lost. In her touch, a warmth that filled every empty corner of his soul. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them deepened. They shared stories, dreams, and moments of quiet understanding. Emily learned to ride, laugh, and trust again, while Jake discovered the strength to let someone in, to allow himself to feel. Their connection was no longer fragile. It had grown resilient, forged in the fire of past pain and shared hope. Jake realized that the emptiness he had carried for so long was not meant to define him, but to make room for something far greater, love that demanded nothing but presence, commitment, and courage. Then came the day when the past threatened to return. Emily's former fiancé arrived, seeking to reclaim her, arrogantly believing she could be swayed by empty promises. But Emily, standing tall beside Jake, spoke with clarity and strength. She no longer belonged to fear or abandonment. She belonged to her own heart, and now, to the cowboy who had saved her in every way that mattered. Jake stepped forward, not with anger, but with unwavering conviction, and the man quickly realized that neither persuasion nor threat could break the bond forged in shared trials and trust. He left, defeated, leaving Jake and Emily stronger, their love unshakable. That evening, under the vast expanse of starlit prairie, Jake took Emily's hands in his. His voice, usually quiet and controlled, trembled with emotion he no longer tried to hide. "I thought my heart would always be empty. I thought I would ride alone forever, but you've shown me that love is worth risking. Everything." Emily's eyes glistened with tears, her hand resting gently over his chest. "And you've shown me that even when life abandons us, we can find our way to someone who sees us, truly sees us," she whispered. In that moment, the past vanished, replaced by a future built on trust, passion, and unwavering commitment. Jake and Emily rode together into the horizon, the wind carrying their laughter, the sun setting in golden triumph. The lone cowboy who had once believed his heart was empty had discovered that love could not only arrive unexpectedly, but transform life entirely. And the abandoned bride had found a man whose heart matched her own, strong, steadfast, and forever hers. Their story became a legend in Red Rock, a tale of courage, heartbreak, and the kind of love that reshapes everything it touches. And for those who watched their journey unfold, remember this: even in the loneliest of hearts, hope can ride in on the most unexpected of people, and life can change forever in a single, unforgettable moment. So don't let these stories end here. Subscribe and follow for more journeys that will touch your heart, ignite your courage, and remind you that love, in its purest form, always finds a way.